welcome to Stoughton Politics with this guy. I'm your host, Noah Beta Haron. You can see my full face today because my wife said she missed seeing my chin, so here they both are. And I am interviewing our good friend, Djuna Perkins, who is back on the show, our first DA candidate to return. Hopefully not the last. Well, you know, I don't think I've been treating everybody poorly, but thanks for coming back on.
Thanks so much for having me.
I wanted to have you back on especially because I did an interview not too long ago with Adam Deitch, apparently the only interview with Adam Deitch, and because he's been very hard to pin down, and so I learned only after I did the interview that like a week before you had filed an ethics complaint against Adam Deitch in his campaign, and I was like, oh well, I missed the opportunity to ask him about it, and it was so difficult getting him on the show that I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get him back. Oh. So I did want to ask someone about it, and you're a good person to ask. So first things first, tell us, as if I didn't know that this existed, what is the ethics complaint about? What prompted you to bring it?
So everyone who has ever worked as a public employee in Massachusetts knows that you cannot conduct political activity on work time, and you can't use public equipment to conduct any political activity. So there was a scandal, I believe, in another DA race a long time, 10, 15 years ago, where a district attorney candidate sent emails to people's government email addresses, soliciting their interest or whatever, and it turned into a big scandal. So I can't remember exactly when it was. Maybe it was January. I heard from several people that they had received emails at their government email addresses, and they were shocked because that is not supposed to happen. And if they had replied to that email, they would be in violation of political ethics rules. So
even if they responded like, "Hey, you can't send this."
Technically, yes.
Wow.
But
okay.
Whether or not they would actually get in trouble, I don't know. But the whole idea is that it is very. To me, it just really showed a lack of judgment and a lack of experience in Massachusetts state politics and how Massachusetts state government works. So that was astounding. And there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, as they teach us in law school. Yeah. And the spirit of the law is really just as important, especially in a race like this, where we're talking about integrity. And the whole reason that the whole platform for Adam Deitch's campaign is trying to restore integrity to the DA's office. And, I too, that's the whole reason one of the main reasons that I was running. And so you have to avoid not just literal impropriety, but the appearance of impropriety. And that, and it's really important to me.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of what prompted you to bring this ethics complaint. Because first off, people reached out to you saying, hey, I've been getting these emails. Do you get the sense that they reached out to like everyone, or is it like friends of yours were like, hey, Djuna?
Yeah, like more friends. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So friends were like, I'm receiving these things.
Right.
This is not okay.
Right, exactly.
As a campaigner, especially considering the penalties, if there are any, for if you, I don't know if you're found guilty of an ethics complaint,
right.
but if it's found to be valid, right, the penalties are not steep. So the purpose of filing the complaint presumably is just kind of to get the knowledge out there.
Yes.
So what calculations did you have to make of like, okay, do I want to be the person? Do I want to be the hall monitor versus like, okay, but people should know. What did that look like?
Like I said, this whole campaign is about restoring trust and integrity to a very important government agency, and that has to take priority. And
I shouldn't have put that
No,
phrase
no,
out there,
I-
but you know what I mean, of
yes.
like not wanting to be the person that everybody is like, oh, there they go again, right?
But I think that's the whole problem with how things have been running in Massachusetts for a long time anyway, is that everyone just says, well, it's not that big a deal. And that's how we devolve into these situations where we have corruption because everybody looks the other way. We can't keep looking the other way. And especially among the leaders. It's one thing if you are the employee who accidentally, replied to it or something, that's different. But you're the one who's setting the standard. You have to be the one who's really the role model for this kind of behavior. I mean,
Because Morrissey, who was not running for re-election, he made a pattern over years of soliciting and receiving campaign donations from his employees.
Correct.
Right? And presumably that was okay because he didn't send it to their email addresses, their government addresses. Like,
I don't know how he did it, but I doubt he would. He's experienced enough to know that. So I would doubt that he would do it that way. But he would host fundraisers that I'm sure all of the employees would know about, or they would certainly know that the campaign was happening. There's other ways and outside of work time to do that. But just going back to the earlier question about. Now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Okay.
Was it about the calculation of whether or not you want to be the one who says something, or was it a different?
Yes, I'll think of it and then we'll come back
in the
to
morning.
it. I know.
Okay. Well, I had a different question about
sure.
campaign donations, which is.
I remembered.
Good. Give me that first then.
So I mean the thing and. You can't. It'd be one thing if you just made a mistake. Like I'm a first-time candidate, and you make mistakes, and then you own them. But what you should not do is double down, because that is exactly what the current district attorney would do. Is every time he made an error, he would not acknowledge it. He would just double down, and I think that's what that's what my opponent did as well. That he doubled down afterward.
Yeah. So the question I wanted to ask
go
about the campaign donations, because I saw a recent article that showed that you had, about $61,000 or so in, cash on hand, and that I think Adam's campaign has 120, something, approximately double. And, my understanding in general of campaign funds is that you need to have enough in order to have a viable campaign, but after a certain threshold, like more doesn't affect things that much, right? Because you need enough to get your message out.
Right.
You don't need to be awash in money, right?
Correct.
However, you need enough.
Right.
What is the enough spent on? What do you do with that money? What does someone coming along and saying, yes, I'll give your campaign $1,000. What does that mean for the campaign?
So because our county is so big, there's 28 towns, 730,000 people. If you wanted to send a print mailer to the entire county, that costs $40,000. So start that as your kind of calculations. Then if you want to do digital ads, I'm actually not as familiar with the cost of those, but so most of the money actually goes toward things like mailers and digital ads. And there's very little in terms of, at least certainly in a grassroots campaign like mine, there's very little that is spent on any kind of overhead. It's mostly just direct to consumer.
Okay, so this is not like all going to your giant staff.
Right, as if my giant unpaid staff. Yeah.
Does any of it go into reimbursing you for gas mileage kind of stuff, or is it all like?
Nah, not really.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so you're just driving around.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So presumably
by the
you
way,
spent money already.
Yes.
So what kind of things did you already put in as I don't know, an investment in the campaign?
So, well, first of all, just so everybody knows, there's a website called OCPF, which is the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, where this is a fascinating tool. You can use this to search for any candidate and any person. You can look up their donation history, and you can look up how much money the candidate has, who has donated to the candidate. It includes information about what their employer is. who their employer is and their name. It's fascinating for analysis, for the voters' analysis of who's doing what. Anyway, but your question about expenditures, so you spend money on things like building a website and business cards and palm card, handouts that flyers to give out to people, lawn signs. Those are the consultants. I mean that is the one paid person, at least for me, and occasional like fundraiser expenses or things like that. That's pretty much it.
Okay, I'm interested in the campaign consultant. What is this? Is this someone that you like? It's just like, here's someone whose advice I trust about.
Yes.
About what? Like, what are the things that you need consulting for? Where you're like, I don't know how I'm doing. Right? Is this
strategy.
someone to like read your website? What is this?
Well, it depends. I think everybody's is different. But it's somebody who helps advise you on strategy and media. Both advertising strategies, media strategies, field strategies. Like how are we going to access all 730,000 people? That kind of thing.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I have a kind of a long question here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Because I did not realize when I did my interview with Adam Deitch, I was excited that he was coming on the show after quite some back and forth of like, when was he going to be able to come and was he going to be able to come and so on. I did not realize it was going to be the only one that like anybody had done with him, and so it blew up online in a way that I was not anticipating, and like I had multiple YouTubers doing like watch-throughs of this interview.
I was on a show where they were doing that too, yeah.
Where that happened, yeah. And so I asked a question that mattered to me, but in an imprecise kind of a way, because I did not think to myself, this is going to be viewed by, like 5,000 people that I've never heard of, and, and so I'd better, get this question right. So I got some flack for it, and I wanted to bring it to you as both as a question in and of itself, and also just as a reality check, as a person in this field who knows what she's doing. Am I insane to think this is an issue?
Okay.
Right? So here we go. The Matthew Farwell is being prosecuted, not only for killing a witness, Sandra Birchmore, but also for ending her pregnancy. Now, as far as we know, she wanted a baby and had no plans to get an abortion. So killing that fetus was an invasion of her bodily autonomy too. I don't want to, downplay that. But I don't think that we can view that extra charge outside of the context of the nationwide fetal personhood movement, which has prosecuted women for miscarriages, for abortions, and has been flexing its muscles by suing doctors, like in New York, across state lines, and so forth. So am I wrong to see this charge for Farwell as an attempt to assert this movement's power in Massachusetts?
So I wondered about that when that charge first came out, and I wish, if I had known, I would have pulled the statute, because I thought the same thing, and I thought, oh, that's weird. But I looked up the statute that makes it that made that a crime, and it was actually passed a long time ago. I want to say it was either Clinton or Bush era. So I don't know. I mean, discretion-wise, of course, prosecutors have tons of discretion to do that. If it is not for a political reason, I suspect it was just. Often prosecutors are trying to make as many charges. Exactly. Get you for everything that you can, because that gives them the great leverage later to be able to try to make a deal. So I think that my rational self would say that is probably what they were doing, and because that law pre-existed any of this fetal personhood movement thing. But of course, I don't really know, since I'm not prosecuting the case myself.
Okay, all right. so not
legitimate
necessarily
question.
Bizarre to be thinking along those lines.
I don't,
because it has been an issue all across the nation, right?
Yes. And I was worried that it was a new law that was passed recently, but I was relieved to find that it was not.
Okay. So it may just be new enforcement of a law that, whatever we think of it, is not brand new.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so I had this other question, right? Because we've talked a lot about corruption within the Morrissey office, and one member of the Morrissey office is running for this office. But a question kept popping up in my mind every time I was looking into especially complaints around the Sandra Birchmore investigation or lack thereof. And one of those was, what's the deal with the state medical examiner? Because the state medical examiner is not within Morrissey's office, so this is like a separate entity that is screwing up. So, do you have any insight as to what they're up to and why they continue doubling down?
So, I don't know for sure. This is sort of educated guesses on my part, but the first thing that everybody should know is that it is the district attorney who is in charge of death investigations. And this is what makes me insane. Whenever somebody says, oh, well, the medical examiner said it was a suicide, can't the district attorney rely on that? No. And in fact, in the trial of Karen Reed for the death of John O'Keefe, the district attorney charged murder, even though the medical examiner found that the manner of death was inconclusive. So the district attorney knows what his discretion is and is perfectly able to push back. But the other piece is the medical examiner makes two decisions. One is the medical cause of death, strangulation. Number two is the manner of death, homicide, accident, or suicide. They cannot make that decision without information from the police who are investigating, in this case the state police, and the district attorney. And the district attorney gets its information from the state police and also from the medical examiner. So the second a person is found dead, the police notify the district attorney and they notify the medical examiner. All three of those parties are supposed to work together. So any experienced prosecutor, in my view, would have understood that death was a murder, because there was just so many markers, especially if you knew anything about the relationship between Farwell and her before that, which they knew immediately. So that, there's no question that they should have been looking at that for a murder. In the Globe the other day, there was an article that quoted the medical examiner as saying, we didn't go to the scene and therefore didn't do much investigation because the state police told us there was no sign of foul play. Okay. But the district attorney generally sends someone to the scene. If they don't send someone to the scene, they get the whole file afterward and they get to look at it, both the autopsy and everything from the police. And then again, they could have said, something looks wrong here. I don't like this. But they didn't. And even if the medical examiner has given you an autopsy opinion, a preliminary opinion that says, I really think this was a suicide, you as a prosecutor can read books too. And you can look at studies, and that is actually the job. And you can go back to the medical examiner and say, okay, well, this is your opinion now, but did you consider this? Did you consider this? Did you consider that? And that is literally the job. And if the medical examiner is still insistent on holding fast to that opinion, you can hire an independent medical examiner if you really think that this maybe was a murder. So, yes, the state medical examiner is independent, but they are not in charge, and they can only make decisions based on the information that they're given. And I the issue with the district attorney, in my mind, is still the continued insistence that was a suicide, even after two other independent, highly respected medical examiners came to the opposite conclusion. Yeah.
So, considering that the main charge against Farwell is killing a witness, this is a witness to all of what came beforehand, not the she wasn't. It's not for killing a witness of her own murder, right?
Right.
So why have no charges based on those earlier offenses been brought? And aren't there more people than just Farwell who might need to be investigated for those?
Yeah. I mean, because she's deceased, you have to be able to tell a story to a jury. Somebody has to say what happened, and it can't be hearsay. So without her being alive to say, I was going to expose him for having, for statutory, he had sex with me when I was under 16, there's no way to get that evidence before a jury if she's not here to say it, and there's no other direct source that would be admissible. So that is the fundamental problem there. But as to whether or not other people should be investigated and potentially prosecuted, yeah. Yeah, and of course I'm not inside, but I would definitely want to be looking at anybody else who ever knew that he had any kind of relationship with her. And also, I mean, it really disturbs me. I don't know how much training police officers get when they start these Explorers programs. And, in my work with schools, boundary violations between adults and kids they happen all the time. They're in the paper every single day. And so I really question the level that those programs are supervised and trained for.
Yeah. Well, I question the degree to which training is an answer, right? Because though there might exist some ignoramuses out there who just don't know that it's not okay to have sex with a 15-year-old when you're like 32. Right. Like, I feel like most people know that's a problem and that you shouldn't do that, right? So it's like,
yes, of course. But there's also, I think Farwell's a pretty extreme case. There's a lot of cases where it doesn't even get overtly sexual between adults and students, but it's definitely inappropriate. And any parent looking at it would be like, why are you spending that much time talking to my kid about Pokemon? Like that, outside of this program,
Pokemon's really fun.
Exactly right. No, I mean, but so I think training is really for those people who are well-meaning, because a lot of times it happens because somebody is well-meaning and is seen as like, no, I'm just so devoted to the kids. That's why I'm spending 24 hours a day doing stuff,
texting them.
Right. I mean, it's this. It becomes a little delusional, but. But for the extremes like Farwell, of course.
So training, the purpose of training is not that it will eliminate these Farwell-like cases. It's for the people who are perhaps well-meaning, but are not good at boundaries and don't understand where the line is between appropriate and inappropriate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure that we weren't living in a fantasy world where if only someone had trained him.
No, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, but also it's supervision. Like who was paying no attention to the fact that he must have been spending extra time with her. There must have been body language that other people could have seen. And clearly, if Divine was in on it too, there's several people who would be interacting with her all the time.
Yeah. So you don't feel that Birchmore and Farwell's case is in the same area of not being worth prosecuting again the way that Karen Reed is, right? Because you've spoken on the fact that, like, look, there's, as much as we want to know what really happened, there is really no way to get from here to there with investigations of Officer John O'Keefe's death, because you can't prosecute that in a way that's going to work, right? But in Birchmore's case, the number of people involved, the crimes involved, the fact that even Farwell is not actually being prosecuted for all of the things
that came before.
You feel that there is worth in investigating that further, in potentially bringing more charges, possibly against more people. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, definitely. I think the unfortunate thing with Birchmore is that the feds have charged him with crimes that are harder to prove than murder, and so that is the real tragedy. That hopefully it will result in conviction, and that will at least be some closure for the family, but it shouldn't have been that way. I mean, first of all, we, her community, should have spoken for her, and B, because of the legal wranglings, it may be a little bit harder to prove than it would have been to just prove murder.
And there's no statute of limitation for murder, right? So we could still charge him for that.
In theory, yes.
Okay. What's the in practice there?
Well, but in practice is if he gets convicted on the federal crimes, I think there's a potential of life imprisonment. So there's not much more that you could get.
And not much more that you would necessarily want to get.
Right. And if it was an acquittal, Yeah, I guess you could come back to state court and do that. I don't know that double jeopardy would apply. It would be an analysis. You'd have to really evaluate whether or not you could do it legally, and then again whether or not it was practical or something worthwhile that the family would want.
Yeah. Now I heard you while you were giving an earlier answer about this topic start to say statutory rape and then kind of walk that back, and I wasn't sure if that was because of some kind of precise legal language that needed to be a thing, or if it was just that you started saying a sentence and then switched to
I think I might have just switched sentences.
So that's still the appropriate term, right?
Yes. Well, it may also have been forcible for all I know.
Right.
But I mean, I
but
think
at
what
the very
everybody
least, statutory rape does apply to any adult having sex with a 15-year-old.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yes,
I was like,
yes.
Has the legal language changed on that in a way that I don't understand?
No.
Okay.
Except that, when there's, I think that now there's a law that I think is called the Romeo and Juliet law, where, you don't typically prosecute.
You don't prosecute teenagers for having sex with other teenagers.
That appear to be truly consensual.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Although, I have thoughts on Romeo and Juliet in particular, but those are literary thoughts.
Right.
So, don't trust a priest bearing poisons.
Right.
Anyway, so you have said openly that you do not consider yourself a progressive prosecutor and that you're kind of baffled by people presumably labeling you that way.
Yep.
On what basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that term progressive prosecutor mean to you that you reject?
Mm-hmm.
And let's start there. What is a progressive prosecutor?
So I think that when other people are talking about progressive prosecutors, what they're talking about is the prosecutors who have a list of crimes that they refuse to prosecute. And I disagree with that for a couple of reasons. The first is the function of the executive branch of government, of which the district attorney's office is a part, is to enforce laws passed by the legislature. That is literally like Constitution 101. That's what we get taught in 5th grade. And the legislature, if the legislature has said shoplifting shall be a crime, operating after suspension will be a crime, then you can't, as the executive branch, just say, not going to do that, because that is literally a dereliction of duty. On the other hand, there's wide latitude about how to prosecute each crime. That's the discretion that the district attorney is given, or not to prosecute a crime at all. So it doesn't mean that you still can't have flexibility and and huge discretion. And there's every case is different, and you have to have a prosecutor who understands the difference between real evil, a mistake made on a bad day, and everything in between. But it doesn't mean you just can carte blanche say, oh no, I'm not ever prosecuting, a shoplifting case. Because try telling that to the bodega owner who is, getting shaken down every day. Those are crimes for a reason. Thou shalt not steal.
Right.
That is literally what it comes down to. So in that way, I do not consider myself progressive. But in the positive ways, I think of myself as progressive is I think that anything that enhances public safety is something that we need to look at. And it both enhances public safety and also enhances real accountability and real change that then will prevent further crime, and also that remediates harm. I mean, and that empowers people who are victims of crime.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you on that.
Yep.
Because when Rachel Rollins in Suffolk County did issue this blanket statement of we are not going to prosecute the following nonviolent misdemeanors, right? The evidence showed that increased public safety, right? The people who came along and did analyses of what happened next found that the people who had committed one offense did not come back and commit another one in as high rates as elsewhere where they had been prosecuted, right? So there was actually a public safety benefit of not prosecuting on those nonviolent misdemeanors. So I want to like kind of put that out there and say like, okay, but if you have this double requirement, enforce the laws passed by the legislature, and maintain public safety. There are times when those do not align, right? And so why do you fall on the side of like, no, I'm not issuing those blanket, non-prosecution orders?
Because it's not fair. It's not fair to that bodega owner. It's not fair to the small business owner who has worked really hard and is barely making ends meet for all the reasons that is the case. To just say what happened to you doesn't matter. And it's different if it's and there's a big difference between a kid who's stealing because he's hungry or his little brother is hungry, a person who's stealing to feed a drug addiction, and a ring of thieves that's going from big box store to big box store and reselling everything on the market. Those are all nonviolent in theory, but should we just say all those are meaningless? No.
After a certain dollar amount, it stops being a misdemeanor and becomes a felony, though, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true.
So you can say, as long as it's a small enough quantities, then it's a misdemeanor. Then we shouldn't prosecute.
If that's what you really think, then the remedy is to tell the legislature to repeal that law. It's not. I think those studies are interesting about I would want to. I haven't read them, but I have read that summaries of them in the newspaper, or whatever. So I would want to dig deeper into what those conclusions are based on and exactly how they did the study. But I just don't. Yeah, I just have a hard time, especially with shoplifting. It's not.
Yeah.
No, is it the crime of the century? But I just want people to remember that even those crimes that seem like they are lesser and no big deal, they actually do have community effects.
Oh, for sure.
And we have to be careful about making sweeping statements like that.
Right. Yeah. No. I think the progressive prosecutor side of the argument is saying, okay, but what the shop owner needs, what the bodega owner needs, is for fewer people to be stealing things, right? And therefore, if our data shows that people actually steal less when you're not prosecuting them for these minor offenses, they're more likely to, get their lives together differently. If we're not, hauling them into court and making them, So it's kind of it's an argument over what the evidence shows, maybe, more than...
Yeah, and how and why it is that they don't repeat. I want to know the reason why they're saying that it doesn't repeat, because, I will agree with you, if people are all shoplifting because they're hungry, then the solution is to make people not hungry, to provide resources so that they're not going hungry. I absolutely agree with that. A happy and productive society is a safe society. But there's different ways to get there, and it shouldn't be at the cost of someone else's justice.
Yeah. Okay. I have my own theory of the case of why people are calling you a progressive prosecutor.
Go ahead. I want to hear that.
And that is that in our extremely polarized, extremely nationally focused political environment, being a woman who prosecutes sexual crimes and other, crimes of
intimate partner violence,
and those kinds of things, reads as progressive because it's caring about people who aren't men, that our politics are so polarized that lenience towards the perpetrators of those kinds of crimes is conservative coded, whether or not it has anything to do with conservatism. And prosecuting those crimes and saying, actually, no, it's not okay to beat your girlfriend is inherently progressive coded. despite the fact that it's, how much more law and order can you get, right?
Right.
Than saying like,
Right.
hey, we have laws against this for a reason.
Right.
This is not okay.
Right.
Let's prosecute it. Right?
Right.
It still kind of reads in people's minds as like, oh, well, she's a progressive lady. Who cares about lady things, right?
Right. You said that, not me.
I'm just saying, like, because when I think of progressive prosecutor, I'm thinking of Rachel Rollins. I'm thinking
Right.
of Larry Krasner. I'm thinking of Chase Abudin, who lost his reelection. I'm thinking of people whose policies
Right.
are in a certain vein, right? Who have a theory of what makes public safety work, and they're going to follow that theory even into unpopular territory, right? They're going to say, but as far as I can tell, this is what actually makes people safe. This is what actually makes people happy. So I'm going to ignore a wide swath of the population's sense of what is right and what is wrong in order to get the public safety, right? That's kind of their theory of the case. Whether or not you think that that's how to get public safety, it's their theory of the case, right? I do not necessarily think of someone who is, very law and order and wants, to put people behind bars for all manner of offenses, but some of those offenses are domestic violence, right? That doesn't read to me as progressive prosecutor.
Right.
Maybe you're progressive and you're a prosecutor, but
Right.
that's not what that term means to me.
Correct.
But I think that's what's going on. I think people are saying like, well, she is a woman. And she has prosecuted domestic violence.
Oh my goodness.
Something tells me this is progressive.
Oh, thank you.
I
think it. I don't know what is really going on. I think that all crime is a form of bullying in many ways, and domestic violence and sexual assault are the ultimate form of bullying. Almost 30% of all crime nationally is domestic violence and sexual assault and child abuse. And I think the same, anecdotally speaking from my own experience, that's pretty much what my experience was. That is a lot of people. And something like, I want to say it's like 66% of women, I hope I'm not misquoting this, but in Massachusetts, the statistics are like something like 60% of women and 25% of men, maybe even 40% of men. It was a significant number for both genders, have experienced some form of sexual assault in their lifetimes. So that is an incredible number of people. And the lifetime impacts of these crimes are also incredible. It leads to substance abuse, depression, mental health issues, people can't hold down jobs. That is a huge amount of the population that is suffering. And it is a crime, as we see, it is happening every single day in the newspaper. And I think, and in Norfolk County, we're pretty safe from things like street crime. We don't have a lot of that. But the worst things that are happening in Norfolk County are in our homes and at school. Something like 24% of, I want to say it was Massachusetts teenagers, reported having been basically stalked by a partner in high school. And that kind of behavior, if that is increasing into adulthood, we have a serious problem, and we should not keep ignoring it. I mean, I think in Norfolk County we've had 10 domestic violence homicides in the last 5 years. And I mean, think about Anna Walsh. That is horrifying. Sandra Birchmore, horrifying. We're all sitting there these are happening in small towns that are well-to-do with people who are educated, and the father of your little league team, your kid's little league team just is accused of murdering someone. I mean, and then chopping her up into little pieces.
Okay, tell me more about that case, because here's a thing that has been an issue for me as an interviewer, right? Is that while I am very interested in politics, I am very interested in policy. I am not much of a rabbit hole chaser. I hear a name in the news and I rarely look into the gory details. And so, it became an issue also with these interviews, is that people are like, well, why isn't he asking about this, this detail of the Sandra Birchmore case, this detail of the Karen Reed case? And I respect the kind of subcultures that develop around these cases, where people do get very invested and they look into every detail and they want answers to very specific questions. I am not that guy. I am not that guy who has read all of those details, and I'm therefore not the guy who can ask those very specific questions. So, can you give me, first off, the Anna Walsh case in particular, but also kind of an overview of what are some of these cases that you have your eye on in Norfolk County that I, as a person, let's pretend I don't read any news whatsoever, what should I know about?
Well, so the Anna Walsh case was in Cohasset, and Brian Walsh was recently convicted of her murder, and her body was never found. And so it was one of the I think it was the first time in 100 years or something that there was a murder conviction without a body. But he was accused of having killed her and then chopped up her body, and he was, and so he was he was now doing life in prison, I think. So that's that case. I think, some of the other cases I have my attention on are all of these very serious intimate partner violence cases. There's been shootings and near death, just really a lot of domestic violence, and it's been I think nationally it's been on the upswing. So there's that. I think that in the Norfolk DA's office, since I started my campaign 18 months ago, many people have emailed me and told me the stories of things that happened to them that were unpleasant, how mistreatment by the DA's office. Now, of course, some of these people just don't understand that sometimes, things just don't go the way we want them to. Yeah. But other people, I've been really concerned about the number of people who were at the very least, just treated badly by the district attorney's office. People making comments that sounded like victim blaming, people minimizing people's experiences, not being told the rationale behind decisions that were made, not being notified of various things that are guaranteed to them, like next court dates, their right to make impact statements, things like that. I think those are really disturbing to me.
Okay. Yeah, you had mentioned the statistics about the number of people who have experienced domestic abuse, I think it was. And on the one hand, when you're looking at the number of people who have ever experienced this, you're often looking at a much smaller percentage of people who are perpetrators, right? Because somebody who's going to hit one partner is likely to do it again with the next partner and the next partner and the next, and they're unlikely to be with the same person for 25 years, right? And so, on the one hand, much smaller number of perpetrators than victims and survivors. And on the other hand, it's not such a minuscule population of perpetrators that we can think to ourselves, well, we know about all of them and we can lock them all up, right? And there's especially on the statistics of sexual assault, right? When I see a statistic of 1 in 4 women has been sexually assaulted in their lifetime and so on, I think to myself, okay, but even if many of those were perpetrated by the same people, considering the number of people I know and am friendly with, the likelihood that I am friends or friendly acquaintances with a rapist is high, right? And we see a lot of cases like Eric Swalwell's, for example, former now congressman from California, right? Where it seems like there were rumors swirling for quite a large amount of time before it actually kind of came to light, because once it came to light, there was no like arguing. Like his endorsers dropped him like a hot potato.
Right.
In a way that
makes it seem like they knew already.
It makes it seem like they knew already, right?
Yeah.
Like they at least knew something.
Right.
Maybe they didn't know that, he assaulted some women, but like
they had a feeling.
They had a feeling about this guy, right? And yet they still endorsed him before it came out, right? So, in the event that you hear rumors about your friend, that, how do you feel about that prospect? Have you ever thought about like, okay, what if something comes to light about my friend? How quick am I going to be to say, on the one hand, no, this is my friend. I can't believe that they would do this. It probably didn't happen. Versus, okay, if my friend did this, then I can't be on their side.
Well, that's such a complicated, such a nuanced question.
I don't ask simple.
No, listen, it's good. It would really disturb me to know that a friend of mine had been accused of something like this. I would, I'm sure I would have gut reactions or whatever. But the other thing, you do have to keep an open mind. And sometimes the evidence, you have to really just look carefully at the evidence. But if in fact it looked like my friend had done this thing, no, I couldn't support them anymore. I could support them as a friend in the sense of you need to get help, you need to acknowledge responsibility. It's also what I would say to my own family members. Even with my children, like whenever they did something bad, if in fact it turned out they did something bad, you take responsibility for it, you do the thing that you need to do to remedy it, and then you fix it, and you never do it again.
Yeah.
And everybody makes mistakes, and I see this a lot in my work with schools. Teenagers who are having their first sexual experiences often do dumb things, and the ones who will move on and become healthy and have healthy relationships get it. They realize, oh, I wasn't really thinking about the other person in this moment, and now I will. And so I have certainly seen people like that, and kids like that, and adults like that too. But then there's a small majority that no matter what you tell them, small minority, who are never going to get it and just need to be kept away from society. And if in fact Mathwell Farwell is convicted, he needs to be kept away from society. So.
How do you view prisons in that equation? Because on the one hand, obviously we don't want, rapists and murderers, just, living in their little apartments and having new and worse relationships, right? And on the other hand, it's kind of an illusion that we have as a society that, like, once we put someone in a prison, they're not part of society anymore, right? They're still doing stuff. Being in prison with these people is not pleasant, right? There's incredibly high sexual assault cases in prison, The people being sexually assaulted in prisons are not less people than the people being sexually assaulted not in prisons.
Correct.
So, like, how do you kind of view the prison system in that equation?
I don't know that I know enough about prisons to be super commenting on it, but the incarceration rates are a lot lower. In Massachusetts, it's actually pretty hard to go to jail. Not many people get sentenced
I'm sure
to jail.
I could succeed if I tried.
Yes, you could. But if
you're really determined.
Really, for the vast majority of people who are in jail are for pretty violent offenses. It's not a lot of nonviolent offenses, especially more and more. Because the fact that we understand more and more how people's brains work and how addiction affects things and how mental health affects things, yeah, prison can be a scary place, and we need to recognize that most people will return to society, and so we have to prepare for that, because that makes the rest of us safer too. It's not about giving them things they don't deserve. It's about the practical calculation of, if they're going to come back, which they will, we need to all live with them, and better for them to be productive and be able to have, decent lives than for them to have to go and pursue crime again. So I think there's that. I just want to go back to Swalwell for a second.
Sure.
The Swalwell thing, I'm like, why does this not stop? I mean, what is it about people in power and taking advantage of that power? It is, like, I used to think when I was in law school, there was always a professor who was having an affair with a student or something. Yeah. And there'd be this moment where I'd be like, oh, what a great professor, he's so amazing. Yeah. And then you'd find that out and you'd be like, oh, can no one be normal?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
God, did you see this thing? I think it was in Arkansas with a school board.
The student? Yes, I did see that.
Like,
I did.
At this school board meeting being like, oh, you're so hot, to like some, I don't know.
What is wrong with people?
I have to imagine that it's more common in Washington than it is elsewhere, because if you're a representative in your community, right, it's not necessarily only going to attract people who are okay with living separately from their spouse for a few months out of the year while they do their work. I feel like if I were to ever run for Congress, which I won't, then a serious consideration for me would be like, okay, but does that mean that I don't get to live at home anymore? Mm-hmm. Does that, do I now have to have two houses, one in, an apartment in Washington, D.C.? Will my wife come with me? Or does, if she has work at home, does she have to stay? Right? This whole, like, I don't want to be separated from my wife thing becomes an issue in a way that I suspect attracts more people who think to themselves, ooh,
here's an opportunity.
Here's an opportunity to not have my spouse looking over my shoulder, in a way that, like, there's plenty of people like this in state government and city government, and like, I don't want to go too far out on this limb and say that this is like only a problem in Washington, D.C., but I feel like it would attract more people who are interested in being away from their spouse.
But just to clarify, and I don't think that you're saying that, but of course, being away from your spouse doesn't cause you to do these things.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. No. But yeah, like, I feel like there's some of it is going to be like, okay, the people who are not normal about this are going to be extra interested, in that kind of thing.
Right. Because it's an opportunity.
I did have a question, because you were my first DA candidate interview. You answered a bunch of questions really interestingly and really well in ways that allowed me to later hone those questions to be clearer about what I was asking for an answer to.
Okay.
So you, for example, taught me that that there is a test for whether evidence is admissible in court, and that if something is not considered an accurate science, then it won't be admissible, right? However, the question I kind of wanted to ask was, okay, but are there kinds of evidence that are legally admissible right now that you have your eye on because you don't think they're as good as they are cracked up to be, in a way that would make you say to subordinate prosecutors, like, let's not use that, right? That is a kind of evidence that I don't trust to give us the right answer. And in the interest of justice and of not putting innocent people behind bars, let us not rely on fill in the blank, right? Are there kinds of evidence that you're like, I don't trust this, even though it's admissible in court?
I don't think so, because at least in Massachusetts, our judiciary is pretty strict. I mean, is pretty trustworthy in the decisions that they're making about what evidence is admissible. So if they think it's if their decision is this kind of evidence is admissible, I'm likely to agree with it.
Okay.
It's not like maybe in some other states you're allowed to use lie detector tests, for example, but we're not allowed to use it here. And lie detector is a great example.
Right.
They're stupid. They should not be admissible.
They don't work.
They're useless, but they're illegal here anyway.
Right.
And go ahead.
Because I've asked this question of people afterwards, and I heard Adam Deitch said bite mark evidence is not really a thing, right? Anything where you're matching one thing to another, even fingerprinting, right? You'll often get matches that are not 100%, but they're presented in court as if they were 100% ironclad evidence. I think I heard from Jim Bearcat that he's got his eye on breathalyzer tests. I think that they're not always as well calibrated as we'd like them to be. Boy, what were some of the other? Sometimes even just eyewitness testimony is not what we would want it to be, right? So it seems like there are various ways in which certain kinds of evidence are often presented as more accurate than the science really shows. Even if the science doesn't say this is useless, right? It can say if this is correct 75% of the time, then that means you're using it against somebody innocent 25% of the time or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure. If I were aware of something like that, then I would think twice about using it, or I would be sure that I had a lot of other evidence that would mean one piece of the calculation is this going to get flipped on appeal? So if I put in evidence that turns out to be not that great, and maybe the defense attorney didn't attack it hard enough or well enough, or later it becomes found to be illegal, is that going to do something to this conviction? So those are definitely, which I don't want to happen. So yes, that's another calculation. Unethical stuff too. I would even though I think this would probably be illegal anyway, but things like confessions exerted by lying about things like I'm going to take your children, I'm going to call in ICE and take your children. I would never use that kind of evidence because that's somebody under duress who would say anything. So I mean, I think there's certainly moral considerations, but there's nothing specific thing I can think of.
Right. You're not this one we're not going to use.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I think there might be some ethical questions about genetic using genealogy traits.
Yeah.
As a prosecutor, I like it because that's
because
how you can identify people who've done
match,
bad things. But there may be ethical issues with that.
Okay.
Because people are voluntarily putting them into Ancestry.com or whatever, and then they're finding relatives, but they've consented to put their DNA in that database. And I think you can do settings where you can say I don't want that analyzed or whatever. But anyway.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you. Oh boy, there was another question that I had right on the tip of my tongue, and it's gone. Was
it ICE related?
Maybe. Tell me something ICE related. It was vaguely ICE related, which is the DA. Although obviously most of the job is prosecution and deciding where to allocate resources and so on. Some of it does end up as kind of lobbying the legislature, saying this should be a law, this should be illegal, this shouldn't be illegal, right? Saying we ought to change the law to do the following things. Are there any laws that you feel ought to be changed, either to make something illegal or to make something legal now?
Yeah. So there's a law right now that was passed that I think doesn't go far enough, and it's making sexual assault or sexual relationships between teachers and students illegal, but it only applies to 18. Once they're 18, it's like students 18 years or younger.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't apply to college professors and their students and so on.
Yes, but to me the issue was high school students. The law should be. Teachers should never have a relationship with a high school student, regardless of their age, because of course there are 18-year-olds in their senior years of high school, And I don't think, I think that it's about the power dynamic. It's not about the age. And that's a significant age difference too, and power differential. So that's one.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Sure.
And thank you so much for coming on the show.
My
We've
pleasure.
run out of time.
Yay.
It even says now time's up, which it didn't used to.
Come on, sugar. Woo. Come on. All right.